Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, I'm not gonna lie, I am just so stoked to share this video with you guys today. I put a lot of preparation, a lot of work into getting this one ready. I may have gone a little bit overboard with the graphics, but we got some high quality graphics. Pat in the back, director for visual presentation. But what's even more important is the story that we're telling, because the implications that we're making here are pretty huge. The 2006 San Diego Chargers versus the 2022 LA Chargers. Kind of feels like Avengers Civil War, right? Earth's mightiest heroes going head to head. It's not really like that. It's more of a comparison video because, again, this is a special team. But that doesn't mean the 2006 team is anything to be taken lightly. A lot of Chargers fans, myself included, consider 2006 as the best year for the Chargers, maybe of all time, right? This is the season of Ladainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, Shawn, Merriman, many of the Chargers greats. And that is something that I take very, very seriously. That team was unstoppable. What? 14 wins, high hopes of making a Super Bowl appearance. Unfortunately, we do know how that ended, but still, what a year to be a Chargers fan in 2006. And you know what? That's something I've said a lot this offseason. What a year to be a Chargers fan. And this has gotten me asking the question, how does our 2022 roster compare to the legendary 2006 Chargers? So we're going to play a little game, right? I've compiled all the starters from each team. And we're going to see how the new roster of superstars compares to the legends of the Bolts and what that implicates for the future and the upcoming season here in 2022. So get ready, guys. This video might be a little bit longer, so buckle up. But we're about to find out if the 2022 Chargers give us the best odds at making a Super Bowl since the days of Ladainian Tomlinson. Oh, I'm so stoked. Before we get started, guys, question in the comments like we always do. Try to answer this one beforehand before we get too deep into the video. Who do you got? Right? Who do you got? San Diego or Los Angeles? The 2022 Los Angeles Chargers or the 2006 San Diego Chargers? Let me know in the comments section below who gives us the best odds at a Super Bowl appearance. Before we do get started, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it, baby. Lights, camera, action. The 2006 San Diego Chargers versus the 2022 Los Angeles Chargers. Again, we've got every starter from both teams. It's almost going to work a little bit like a game, right? We're going to compare the two players at this point of their career. So 2006 Philip Rivers versus 2022 Justin Herbert. And we're going to give basically a point for every position to see who has the edge at making a Super Bowl. So, of course, we're going to start here at the quarterback position. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the face cam with every single one of these so you guys can see the beauty, the crispiness of the graphics that we put together. We have a lot of them in this video. Quarterback, the most important position on the football field. This one featuring Philip Rivers versus Justin Herbert. What have I done? I put myself in a corner here, man. Now I got to choose between two of my favorite players of all time. Oh, man. In the comment section below, guys, please tag along. Feel free to post your picks. 06 versus 22. Who you got for the quarterback position, et cetera, as we get going along. So let's start here with Philip Rivers, right? 2006, first year as a starter, 25 years old. He was nothing short of spectacular. Led us to 14 wins. This dude was just one of the biggest reasons why the Chargers were so special in 2006. I do, however, believe that Philip Rivers wouldn't hit his best years until around 2008, right? And when looking into the Justin Herbert segment, this guy really did hit the ground running in his rookie season, breaking all sorts of records. Offensive Rookie of the Year. We have ourselves a very, very special player on our hands, right? And especially in terms of starting off his career super, super hot. And in his second year last season, Herbert shattered Chargers records everywhere. The most yards, most touchdowns, Chargers quarterback franchise history. He's absolutely insane. What's even more insane is his growth and acceleration. It's absolutely unbelievable. I think, after surpassing 5,000 yards last season, He just might be set up for the best year 3 of any quarterback in NFL history. So here comes the difficult part, right? We're going to start awarding points. San Diego versus Los Angeles. Philip Rivers versus Justin Herbert. At this point of these quarterbacks' careers, I've got to give the point to Justin Herbert and Los Angeles. So point LA at the quarterback position. Oh, man. I still love you, Philip Rivers, man. One of my favorite all-time Chargers. Let's move into the running back position. Ladainian Tomlinson versus Austin Ekeler, right? Edge of your seat, the suspense. Who's it going to be? I understand, Chargers fans. There's going to be some players on this list where it's very, very evident, but we're going to go through it anyway, right? Ladainian Tomlinson. And we're not just talking any LT season. We're talking Ladainian Tomlinson's best season in his career. The 28 touchdown record-breaking season, that historic moment that we say all the time on stream. Chargers fans are witnesses to history. This was the 2006 season for Ladainian Tomlinson. And this team knew how special he was. They built the entire offense revolving around him, and he absolutely delivered. Knocked everybody's socks off. If you had this guy in fantasy football in 2006, congratulations on your fantasy football championship. Ladainian Tomlinson, historic season, one of the all-time greats. Now, that doesn't mean the Chargers don't have something extremely special in Austin Ekeler as well, because if you look at the two Chargers teams, 06 and 22, very different in terms of their offense. Offense in 06, very run heavy. In 22, very pass happy. Ladainian Tomlinson, very good on the ground. Austin Ekeler, very good through the air. So the Chargers got something very nice in Austin Ekeler this season. And it's pretty evident of his talent, considering the dude scored, what, like 20 touchdowns last season. Very impressive. Justin Herbert's got himself an awesome weapon in Austin Ekeler, but I don't think it's going to come to anybody's surprise. We're going to give the point in the running back category to the San Diego Chargers. It's LT in 2006. Nobody's going to surpass that. Next up, our next position is one that maybe hasn't been utilized by the Chargers much in recent seasons. That could change in 2022, but one that was very important to the 2006 Chargers, and that's going to be the fullback position featuring Lorenzo Neal versus Xander Horvath. Buckle up, Chargers fans. Who are we going to select? Again, probably another one of those no-brainer situations, but we are going to talk a little bit about Lorenzo Neal because this guy heavily underappreciated, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of Chargers fans that absolutely understand his importance, but at the same time, this dude right here, probably my favorite Charger of all time. Him and Junior Seau very, very close, right? Lorenzo Neal had a lot to do with that. Probably the best fullback I've ever seen, and that really defines the position for me. He helps Ladainian Tomlinson break multiple records while also providing a very stable foundation for the Chargers' run-first offense. Absolutely unbelievable legend of the game. Now, Xander Horvath, I understand. He's going up against one of the greats. We already know who's going to win. But I am very excited to see this guy play in 2022. I think the Chargers went into this season keeping in mind they want to improve their power run a little bit. And I think guys like Xander Horvath, Zion Johnson, Isaiah Spiller, they're a step in the right direction. Do I think the rookie is going to surpass the production of a guy like Lorenzo Neal? Absolutely not. But he's one definitely to be excited about. So obvious point here goes to San Diego. Now, next up, we're going to move into the wide receivers, and this one might actually require a little bit of explanation, okay? I'm a huge Chargers fan, but I was also a wee boy in the 2006 season, just starting to get into football. Since then, I really do understand the 2006 season, how special it was, but at the time, the Chargers did have a Vincent Jackson and a Malcolm Floyd on the roster, both of which fantastic Chargers legends. But at this time, they weren't yet listed as starters. Vincent Jackson, this was his second season. He would log something like 27 receptions, 450 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Floyd got something like 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Both would go on to have very legendary careers with the Chargers. But at this point, they were not the starters, so just keep that in mind. I also do want to tack on there, rest in peace, Vincent Jackson. One of my favorite players when I was growing up. Definitely left an imprint on me. And we decided to rep the 83 in this video in honor of that. So with that in mind, let's move into the Chargers wide receiver one on the roster at the time in 2006. Keenan McCardell versus Keenan Allen. the battle of the Keenans. Well, Keenan McCardell, I'm sure, could be considered a legend of the game at his time, right? He had a long and good career with teams like Cleveland, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, and San Diego, of course. He had something like 5 seasons logging over 1,000 yards. And you know what? The Chargers wanted him, so much so that they traded for him at age 34. He was just coming off another 1,000-yard season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know what? I'm definitely going to say that Keenan McCardell was solid in 2005. Unfortunately, in 2006, his age definitely caught up with him, right? He only started 11 games, 437 yards, no scores. Kind of a rough season for Keenan McCardell. Now, on the other side, you got Keenan Allen, current Chargers great, one of the most consistent Chargers wide receivers of all time, right? And he's still performing at an elite level, coming off of his 5th 1,000-yard season at age 29, going into age 30. He's absolutely fantastic. And he also benefits from the Chargers' pass-happy offense now in 2022. So I'm going to say that both players are great, but it's Keenan Allen who carries the clear edge for me at wide receiver 1. That's going to be another point, Los Angeles. Let's move here into the wide receiver 2 position, featuring Eric Parker versus Mike Williams. Now, Eric Parker, I would say maybe the most productive wide receiver in 2006. They had a lot of mixing around, but again, they were a run-first unit, so it's not something too crazy to think about. And Parker was always a very serviceable wide receiver for the Chargers in the short time that he was with them. In 2006, he logged something like 659 yards, no touchdowns, but it's really hard for me to imagine why Vincent Jackson wasn't utilized any sooner. Again, I don't remember the season as well as some of you veteran Chargers fans, so let me know why Vincent Jackson wasn't inserted a lot sooner. You didn't see an uptick in targets from what I saw until something like week 11. Either way, Eric Parker, this dude was decent, but not a huge piece to the Chargers' legendary 2006 season. Now, Mike Williams for the 2022 team, this dude carries wide receiver 1 potential with most other teams in the NFL, right? And the Chargers got him lining up at wide receiver 2. That is very, very good. Some would say even overkill, and just a huge edge for the Chargers' passing attack this season. Mike Williams is coming off a career year with the Bolts. He could very well start transitioning to like a Chargers permanent X-receiver position or X-receiver role with the team as Keenan Allen starts to get more slot work. He's a very special weapon for Justin Herbert, one that brings a very unique skill set. I think we're going to go ahead and give another point here to Los Angeles and Mike Williams, the wide receiver 2. Very, very good wide receiver 2. Now, next up, we're going to move into the tight end position. All right, here comes another legend of the game, another legend of the Chargers. Antonio Gates versus Gerald Everett. Another no-brainer for Chargers fans. Yeah, but still, one of the biggest reasons the Chargers maybe didn't find a lot of dominancy from their wide receivers is because of the sheer dominance and amount of targets to the tight end position, of course, being Antonio Gates. Do you guys miss those on Sundays? Rivers to Gates, touchdown! I sure do. And Gates had another fantastic season in 2006. 924 yards, 9 touchdowns. He painted an obvious picture that he and Rivers were going to be a very special tandem for very many years to come, okay? But Chargers fans also get a little bit excited for Gerald Everett, right? He's, to me at least, a very, very solid player. And honestly, I think he's about to break out in 2022 with Justin Herbert big time, right? Herbert loves the tight end position. With him slinging him the ball versus the other, quarterbacks he had previous in his career, I feel Everett will finally get to flex, his ability to catch the ball, his ability to generate yards after catch, his physicality, after. It's absolutely insane what he can offer and his potential for the 2022 Chargers. He's my 2022 camp star pick. But there's absolutely no way he's going to reach anywhere near Gates' production. Antonio Gates, one of my favorite Chargers of all time. I'm sure many Chargers fans can say the same. This is going to be another obvious point here to San Diego. And next up, we're going to get into the offensive line, which actually did kind of shock me a little bit. We're going to try and make it a little bit brief here because, again, we do have more skill positions to get to on defense, and the video could be considered getting a little bit long even at this point. So let's jump right into it. Left tackle, Marcus McNeill versus Rashaan Slater. Now, again, admittedly, I don't remember much from the 2006 offensive line. I was a kid, but I did do some research on these guys that I'm not familiar with, right? And I unearthed a very interesting situation at left tackle. Marcus McNeill was a rookie in 2006, right? And Slater's coming into his second season, so very similar ages here. And it made the decision even tougher for me because, again, they're at similar points in their career. Not only that, McNeill was incredible in his rookie season, a lot like Slater, very reminiscent of Slater. But I will say he did leave a sour taste in some fans' mouths because he did struggle mightily with injuries later in his season after getting a fat contract. Still, we're talking about 2006 Marcus McNeill, right? There's no doubt that he was another crucial component to the Ladainian Tomlinson's dominance in 2006. However, Rashaan Slater's dominance is also very similar, but on the side of a stable passing attack instead of a running attack, if that makes sense. So both very strong candidates to take the win here, but I'm actually going to go with Rashaan Slater because slight edge, he is coming into his second season, and I do believe that there was an injury thing going on with McNeill in 2006 as well. So we're going to go ahead and give the win here to Rashaan Slater. So another point to the 22 Los Angeles Chargers. Let's move into the left guard position here swiftly, featuring Chris Dielman and Matt Feiler. Now, Dielman was a very good offensive lineman for the Bolts for very, very many years, right? In 2006, he started 15 games, and from what I've read, he was very solid in that year as well. He was voted first alternate in the Pro Bowl, provided a stable, ground for Rivers and Ladainian Tomlinson. Very, very good player in Chris Dielman. What's interesting is that Matt Feiler is very comparable to Dielman. And this, again, it's almost like the Rashaan Slater and Marcus McNeill comparison all over again. Matt Feiler has also provided a very solid foundation for the Bolts at offensive line. And he was a strong Pro Bowl candidate as well in 2021. So both very, very good player. This decision, again, was tough, but in the end, I feel like Dielman carries with him, like 4 Pro Bowls? He's touted as one of the team's best offensive linemen ever. We're going to have to give the win here to the San Diego Chargers and Chris Dielman. Next up, the center position. One of the only offensive linemen that I knew growing up by name, household name here. We got Nick Hardwick versus the current Corey Linsley. I'm going to tell you guys this right now. I did not expect this much drama for the offensive line in this video, okay? I figured this would be a breeze. No, there are some really tough decisions in this one. This is another one right here. Nick Hardwick, one of the best-known Chargers offensive linemen, and it's for good reason, right? He just might be the Chargers' best center of all time. And you know what? In 2006, that was probably his best year. He was the leader of that offensive line for very, very many years, beloved by a lot of Chargers fans. He was recognized as one of the league's best as well, not just by the Chargers, but in the NFL as a whole. Now, on the other side, we got Corey Linsley, who's also one of the best centers in football today. Linsley, it's so tough because he's fresh off of a Pro Bowl season, right? And then before that, he made first team All-Pro as well, right? So this is extremely tough as both players are very, very talented, very important to their respective offensive lines. Hardwick, one of my favorite offensive linemen of all time. He probably is. There's not a lot of super fans for the offensive line position. Linsley, certainly one of the best in the sport today, but I'm going to have to give it to Nick Hardwick. If you're a Chargers fan back then, even post-2006, Nick Hardwick was just too important to this team. So another point, San Diego. Let's move into the right guard position next, featuring Mike Goff versus Zion Johnson. All right. Now, from what I've read, it seems that Mike Goff was an exceptional lineman at the time, right? Great leader. If anything, he was a great locker room presence. And he was as consistent as it gets at this point of his career. I think 2006 was his 4th consecutive season playing all 16 games. So if anything, he was always available. Although he never made a Pro Bowl, many considered Goff to be a really good offensive lineman, okay? Then we have the rookie, Zion Johnson. As of right now, he's an unproven NFL entity, right? He doesn't have a single snap in the pros. And in most instances, that would be enough for me to give it to the solid vet, especially one that's as consistent as Mike Goff. However, I do have to point out just how special a prospect Zion Johnson is. And this might be where we find our first controversy in the comment section. All of the first rounders in this season, out of all of them, Zion Johnson perhaps carries some of the best odds to make the Pro Bowl in his first season. He is that good. He's going to be a very special player to this team. I wasn't expecting this after reading up on Mike Goff because it does seem like he was very consistent, but I'm actually going to go point Los Angeles for the right guard position because I do feel that Zion Johnson's ceiling is much higher. He's going to make Pro Bowls as Mike Goff did not. It just edges out for me, and it's going to go to the 2022 team. Next up, to finish out the offensive line unit, we have the right tackle position of Shane Olivea versus Trey Pipkins. Now, Olivea, considered by many a huge draft steal for the Chargers. I think he was taken in the 7th round, and his play was exceptional. And like many on this list, he was an important piece to the Chargers' 2006 season. I honestly really haven't found one negative thing about him in his 2006 season, right? He was a great player. Unfortunately for Olivea, he suffered a season-ending injury with the Giants in 2008, and his career was kind of over after that. And he also recently did pass away earlier this year due to heart disease, so rest in peace to Shane Olivea as well, okay? Now, in terms of a Trey Pipkins to the current 2022 Chargers, he started to gain some momentum, I'll say, when it comes to earning the Chargers fans' trust, right? He's shown amazing growth in his time last year. He's been spending his offseason very closely with Rashaan Slater and Rashaan Slater's training staff. His upside is definitely growing. But at this point, Olivea's talent, in my opinion, far more trusting than Trey Pipkins, because we kind of got to see it more to believe it. It's not as unique as the Zion Johnson situation. So we're going to give another point here to Shane Olivea and the San Diego Chargers, all right? So at this point of the video, I'm not quite sure how long it's going to be. Let's move into the defense, right? Second half of the video. How are things going to shake out in the second half between San Diego and Los Angeles? Start off here, left end, Luis Castillo. I think another no-brainer versus a Jerry Tillery. No suspense here. Castillo was a monster for the Chargers, especially in 2006. This dude was the leader of the defensive line, right? Huge piece to this dominant defensive line. And Castillo was super disruptive, right? Logging 7 sacks and even an interception on the 2006 Bolts. His only drawback was that he only played in 10 games this season, right? But even then, very disruptive, very big part of that defense. On the other side, we do have Jerry Tillery. And we all know, I think most fans, we all feel kind of the same way about him. It's possible that another player even takes his spot, right? Like a Morgan Fox. It might not even be this comparison. But even then, I think the result would be the same. I really do hope that Jerry Tillery can improve this season. I just don't think it's going to happen. So it's going to be another obvious pick. Point San Diego and Luis Castillo. Next up, the defensive tackle position. This dude was a beast, man. Probably, again, another no-brainer. Even though Sebastian Joseph-Day, a very, very good player, we're talking about Jamaal Williams, right? Just, man, taking a look back at this team was absolutely loaded. Jamaal Williams. This is one of the greatest Chargers of all time. This dude was the definition of a wide-bodied, run-stuffing, dominant nose tackle. The dude was absolutely insane. He's one of the biggest reasons why the Chargers defense was so good versus the run. His performance earned him 2 All-Pro seasons, one of which was indeed in 2006. Monster player for the Chargers in 06. Then we got Sebastian Joseph-Day. Now, don't get me wrong. Sebastian Joseph-Day on the 22 Chargers, he's going to be fantastic, right? His presence will, without a doubt, improve the Chargers' run defense overall, while also adding another element to rushing the passer from the inside. But unfortunately, like many other players on this list, he's going up against an all-time great. And at that point, you just can't compete with that. So this is going to be another point, San Diego and Jamaal Williams. Next up, we got the right end position featuring Igor Olshinsky versus Austin Johnson. Igor was a huge defensive lineman, 6'6", 300 pounds, well over that. His contributions were mainly found in defending against the run, right? And he was very serviceable at doing so. I would say also he fit very well next to Jamaal Williams. That defensive line was very, very good at slowing down the run. I really can't recall or find any evidence to suggest that he was especially dominant, but from what I can tell, he was certainly solid. He did, however, miss a few games over 2005 and 2006, so kind of keep that in mind as we keep going here. Austin Johnson for the 22 Chargers, I feel like he's going to be playing a similar role here, right? He's here to help versus the run. And he's been one of the best in the league, especially since last season, to do so. So this did make this decision pretty difficult. Johnson, to me, is going to be solid but not elite. Kind of came to the same conclusion with Igor, but I think I'm going to edge it out to Igor, as that unit was just so dominant versus the run. He had to have been part of that formula. So I'm going to say edge Igor and point San Diego. And next up, let's move into some of the big boys, right? This was probably one of the most difficult scenarios on this entire video for me, all right? Shawn Lights Out Merriman versus Joey Bosa. Definitely the ultimate test for me on this list. I love so many Chargers players. I'm definitely a super fan of these two dudes right here, man. Both these dudes also left an early impression on the NFL as they had both won Defensive Rookie of the Year awards. Everybody knew these guys were going to be insane, right? Shawn Merriman, perhaps one of the greatest Chargers of all time, his production in 2006 was absolutely unreal, right? 63 tackles, 17 sacks, only 12 games played. What? If you were a quarterback in 2006, you had to be having nightmares that lights out was coming for you. The Babadook lights out Shawn Merriman. He was absolutely insane, right? And this led to his second straight Pro Bowl, his first All-Pro appearance. Absolutely insane season for Shawn Merriman, right? And then the other side, we got Joey Bosa, who to me, again, is another greatest Charger of all time, right? He's made the Pro Bowl 3 years straight going on right now into 2022. He's one of the most disruptive players in the NFL today. One of my favorite Chargers on the roster right now. And much like Merriman's 2006 season, he's going to have some quality help on the other side, right? I believe that this could lead Joey Bosa to his best season ever, and one that might actually rival Shawn Merriman's in sacks. That's kind of crazy to think about. Still, this is probably the most difficult decision on me for this entire list. The result may actually shock you a little bit. Love both these players, but I'm going to have to edge it out. Point San Diego. Shawn Merriman is going to take the win on this one. But you know what? Joey Bosa is going to have a monster season, and it's one that carries a lot of hope for some of the best Chargers, numbers in terms of sacks that we've seen in a very, very long time. Whew. We did it. We did it. Let's move on to the opposite edge rusher. Again, another difficult decision here as both of these guys, very, very good players for the respective teams. We got Shawn Phillips versus Khalil Mack, right? Phillips was insane with the Chargers, right? 2006 was probably his best season. 11 and a half sacks. Very, very good. And the pair of budding stars at edge were just impossible for offenses to contain in terms of Shawn Phillips and Shawn Merriman. The Shawns, the duo Shawns. Now, this formula led to the Chargers logging 61 sacks. That is the second most in franchise history. Very good season, very good pair of edge rushers. And we're kind of going into a similar situation here in 2022. Because now we got Khalil Mack. Oh, boy. This is already a legend of the game, right? Everybody knows Khalil Mack. He's been one of the most disruptive players in the NFL since 2014. And he's being set up for one of his best seasons ever, even in his twilight season. I think he's, 31 years old right now. He could get close or even surpass his career high of 15 sacks. Mack has never had an edge opposite him quite at the quality of a Joey Bosa, and that's going to have a big effect on him. It's going to create a big opportunity for Khalil Mack. Sure, he only played 7 games last season, and he's remained almost flawlessly healthy before that year, but in that time, he logged 6 sacks over 7 games in 2021. He was on pace for a monster season. In his return this year, and this time with the Bolts and Joey Bosa, I think he could get close, if not surpass his career high of 15 sacks. So in this one, I'm actually going to give the win to Los Angeles and Khalil Mack because honestly, that pairing and Khalil Mack not quite being too old to still put up some monster sack numbers, I think the potential is very much so real. All right. Next up, let's move on to the middle linebacker position. Both teams in 06 and 22. I don't know if it was a huge point of emphasis here. We're going to go over it anyway very briefly. Randall, Godfrey versus Drew Tranquill, right? Godfrey, again, I don't know too much about him. He was a twilight player for the Chargers. They signed him at age 31. I think in 2006, he was 33 years old. And from what I can tell, he was very serviceable. He did log a career high in sacks that season. Of course, that Chargers team was crazy with the sacks with 4, right? But from what I could see, or from what I could tell in my research, he was solid but not elite, right? Serviceable, I should even say. He did miss some time as well with injury, so keep that in mind. Drew Tranquill with the 2022 Chargers, however, I would consider a fan favorite on the 2022 roster, right? He's been much like Godfrey, solid but not elite, but definitely does offer a lot in terms of coverage and, pretty much overall as a player, but at a higher level than Godfrey, I would have to say. His only issue, as many of us do know, is health. But when healthy, I do think the edge goes to Drew Tranquill. So I'm actually going to give another point here to Los Angeles and Drew Tranquill. All right. Next up, let's move into the cornerback position. This is where things kind of get crazy, man. In terms of looking at the 2006 Chargers versus the 22, this is maybe where we see a shift in power just a little bit. Cornerback 1, Quentin Jammer versus J.C. Jackson. Now, some people like but not love Quentin Jammer. I totally get it. I love him. I got his jersey. I think he was a really good player. The dude was an absolute thumper, which, yeah, did lead to some penalties, but he was very fun to watch. Sure, he wasn't one of the best corners in the league. He didn't log a ton of picks or anything, but I do think he was solid and pretty consistent in terms of staying on the field, right? Even though he wasn't one of the best corners or nothing like that. But this is what I was leading up to. If the Chargers had one weakness on defense in 2006, it was the passing D, right? And I do think Quentin Jammer kind of was part of that. He wasn't terrible, but he certainly was no cornerback one out there. For the Chargers on the other side, we got J.C. Jackson, who without a doubt is going to take the win here for me, right? JC not only carries, cornerback one shutdown traits, but he's an absolute freaking nature when it comes to coming up with interceptions. That's why they call him Mr. INT, right? He leads the league in picks since he was signed in 2018 as a free agent. He's got 25 of them, which is absolutely mind-boggling. So in terms of passing D, it's got to be J.C. Jackson for me. All around, much more valuable players. That's going to be another point, Los Angeles. All right. Next up, let's move on to cornerback 2, featuring Drayton Florence versus Asante Samuel Jr. And again, 2006, not the best year for the Chargers in passing D. Florence was a solid defensive back, but not really a playmaker, right? Still, it must be noted that his effort as a tackler was very solid. I think he had a pretty nice number when all things are said and done in that season. Still, some of his mistakes were very, very costly, including a personal foul versus the Patriots, which some say led to the Chargers' demise in 2006. Still, as a player, I will say he was decent, right? From what I can tell, he was decent. On the other side, we got the Chargers and Asante Samuel in 2022, right? This dude's an exceptional talent, and he's got a very, very nice ceiling. Sure, he's got more to prove in 2022. He had an injury-riddled rookie campaign, back-to-back concussions. That's never good. But in the time he was on the field, he did prove that he can be a playmaker and provide solid coverage. And with so much help from all the other DB positions, I think he's being set up for a very big year. So this is going to be another point. Los Angeles and the 2022 Bolts. Kind of crazy. Let's move on here to the position of free safety, featuring Marlon McCree versus Nasir Adderley. Now, from what I can tell, again, didn't really know much other than that they kind of struggled in DB coverage for the 2006 season. From what I can tell in my research, McCree was an okay bridge safety for the Bolts in 2006 and 2007, but he didn't really do anything crazy in all-around coverage. He was okay, right? He was okay. He had his issues, and again, it did kind of contribute to a lackluster pass D in 2006. Now, Nasir Adderley, in some ways, can be viewed a little similarly, right? He's an all-around decent free safety, but he hasn't really lived up to expectations. However, what's different between Adderley and McCree is that I feel Adderley's uptick in production last season was very promising. Sure, he didn't log a pick, but his contributions in tackling were noteworthy, with almost 100 from the safety position. That's pretty big. This is a double-edged sword, however, right? He has been suspect to broken tackles in the past, but still at this point, I do think his upside is higher between him and McCree. I'm going to go ahead and give the edge to Nasir Adderley and point Los Angeles. And finally, to wrap up all the positions here, don't know how long this video is going to be at this point. Don't really care. This has been a super fun one. You guys can probably see me losing a little bit of steam here. Long video, but man, dude, I'm excited to see what the tally is here at the end. Strong safety. Terrence Keel versus Derwin James. Now, unfortunately, Keel was not the best player for the Chargers, right? He had a lot of issues off the field on top of struggling in coverage. And unfortunately, he did pass away shortly after the 2006 season in a car crash, and that's super sad to see. But in regards to the 2022 season, Derwin, everybody knows this guy. He's one of the best players on an already loaded roster on defense, right? And his contributions are not only elite, but likely some of the best in the entire NFL, regardless of position. Derwin James is a freak of nature, and he's going to be one to watch in 2022. His leadership, skill, and unfathomable versatility are one of the biggest advantages the Chargers will have in 2022. So I think it's pretty evident. The edge is going to go to Derwin James. Another point, Los Angeles Chargers. If you guys have been following along in the comments section, let me know what your score is in the comments section below. It's time, the final reveal, what it's all been leading up to. I've got the 2006 San Diego Chargers coming in with 10 points. The 2022 Los Angeles Chargers are coming in with 11 points. Just edging it out. How crazy is that? And I'll be honest, guys, I wasn't sure what the total would be until I tallied up all the players. I knew it would be close, but I'm still kind of shocked to see the 2022 Bolts edge it out because the 2006 team's so legendary. It really does come down to just a few things for me, right? The San Diego Chargers had one of the nastiest, if not the best running attack in the league, right? And this is coming off Ladainian Tomlinson's historic season, so that's no surprise. But despite having incredible players like Vincent Jackson and Malcolm Floyd on the team, their passing attack wasn't really anything special outside of, let's say, Antonio Gates. This doesn't mean they were bad. They were at times a very good passing team, but they were much more so known for their running attack. And I did kind of give the 2022 Chargers a little bit of an edge here in terms of their wide receivers. But where things got really shaken up was on defense. The 2006 Chargers were one of the nastiest pass rushing units in the entire NFL, even maybe in league history. They were also very proficient at stopping the run. The only thing that they lacked was quality coverage from their DBs, right? That was certainly their Achilles heel. And this is something that the 2022 Chargers have got in spades. J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, Derwin James. It's one of the strengths of this team. Sure, their run defense in 2022 is not going to be as good as San Diego's, but it won't be as bad as the 06 passing defense was, if that makes sense. So this combined with the Chargers' insane ceiling in terms of pass rushers that, Joey Bosa, Khalil, Mack, which could maybe even rival the 06 Chargers, this helped them edge a slight win, at least in this video. So what does this all amount to? Well, the 06 Chargers is highly regarded as the best Chargers season of all time, right? The best Chargers team of all time. After all, they were just 2 games away from a perfect regular season. If it weren't for the pesky Patriots derailing everything at the last second, I think this could be looked at as one of the best teams in NFL history, right? And this is huge, because from what I've put together here in this video, the 2022 Chargers are now in the running for at least to be in consideration the same conversation of that status. Sure, it's a paper team right now, right? Nothing is yet proven until we see proof of it on the field. We can't quite take this to the bank and expect a Super Bowl right now, but my point is that this team, without a doubt, carries the most favorable championship potential that we have seen in decades. If everything works out, players stay healthy, and they can fend off the lethal AFC West division rivals, I feel like we could be looking at one of the best Chargers teams in our lifetime. And again, I understand as a Chargers fan, it's hard to get invested. We've been let down a lot. But if there's a year to really throw down that optimism, declare that you're a Chargers fan, it's now. Because we really haven't seen a team like this in a very long time. And when you kind of see everything side by side, the picture becomes a little clearer. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me in this epic and long video. The rector's all wiped out now. We're going to go put our feet up and see what the comment section has to say, but it's been a good one. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you did enjoy this, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty, man. The best team since the days of LT? Could you imagine? Bolt up.